let's get started then. Right. Again, good morning, everyone, and welcome to NEPA's webinar about the New England State Story, or because we love our acronyms, NEST grant program. The session will be recorded and shared on our website. So please keep your camera off if you prefer for your face to not be in the recording. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the land on which we are meeting. At the New England Foundation for the Arts, we believe that one of the roles of the arts is to make the invisible visible. We also believe that it is not the responsibility of those who have been made invisible to remind us that they are still here. Therefore, as a committed ally, NEFA acknowledges that the ground on which we work is the traditional land of the Massachusetts and Wampanoag people. We honor their ancestors past, present, and future, and recognize their continued existence and contributions to our society. NEFA also acknowledges that all the places that our distributed staff live and work, and where we provide support and hold events, are Indigenous lands. Because we are gathering in virtual space, it is vital we acknowledge that not only are we tied through the lands that we are on, but because we are consuming resources through our cables and our electricity, through our use of natural gas and heating oils, water, and occupation of space, while we are gathered virtually, whether we are in our offices or in our homes. The history of technology in the United States, including the platform we are using today, Zoom, is deeply tied to Silicon Valley, the traditional and present homelands of the Ohlone people. We offer our respect to the elders, past, present, and future, of all Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we live and work on, both physically and digitally. So again, everyone, thank you for joining us. My name is Ellen Rose Bellard. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the program coordinator for New England Presenting and Touring. And I am joined by my lovely colleagues today, who I will let introduce themselves. I don't know which one of you wants to go first.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Adrienne Petrillo, she, her pronouns. I'm the Senior Program Director for New England Presenting and Touring here at NEFA.
And good morning, everyone. My name is Audrey Serafin. I use she, her pronouns, and I am also calling in from Boston, Wampanoag, Nipmuc, and Narragansett land. I probably got that wrong, but from all, great to be here with everyone this morning.
Thank you, and I also want to acknowledge our colleague, Sejin Yu, who is behind the scenes helping us out today. Say works with Fallon, Audrey, and myself on our regional grant programs. Thank you for joining us today, Say.
All right. So today we are here to share information about NEPA's New England State Story, or NEST, grant program. NEST is one of many grant programs available to support projects based in New England. I encourage you to review our website for information about the other NEFA programs and resources. So NEST is New England State Story, and the NEST program funds performances, readings, and screenings of work by regional, national, and international artists presented by New England-based nonprofit organizations. NEST is NEFA's oldest program and the core of support for New England organizations that connect artists with communities in our region. NEST is publicly funded and supported by the National Endowment for the Arts, the NEA, and the 6 New England state arts agencies.
I'd like to share a little bit about the program goals for NEST, which really inform then the program design as well as the funding criteria that we'll be talking about later in this session. So the first goal is to expand direct access to high quality artists and aesthetic diversity for all New England communities by artists from New England, the nation, and across the globe. And I will say, as Fallon mentioned, NEST is supported by the NEA and the 6 state arts agencies in New England. And so supporting access to the arts for all is an important component of our partnership with those organizations. We are also looking to foster opportunities for collaboration and partnerships among New England cultural organizations and between artists and organizations. The field that we serve with these programs is the presenting and touring field here in New England, and it's an interconnected ecosystem. And NEST funds projects that really help support those creative partnerships and also build opportunities. And those opportunities can lead to long-term partnerships and relationships that often exist well beyond the scope of a NEFA-funded project. We also encourage projects that provide meaningful interaction between artists and communities, extending beyond the stage. Activities that go beyond the stage provide deeper interaction to enhance the audience's experience of the arts and the understanding of the artist's work. This also can lead to a much more meaningful connection for the artists and for the community being reached. I will now pass it over to Audrey, who's going to talk about the 3 different versions of the NEST program.
Thank you so much, Adrian. As mentioned, and as some of you may already know, NEST exists in several different forms here at NEFA in 3 different levels, which are appropriately titled NEST 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to be going into detail explaining those different roles today. First, we have NEST 1. This is the most basic form of NEST. It funds a New England nonprofit applicant to bring a New England artist from outside of their state. So one artist who is from a New England state performing in a different New England state. NEST 2 funds tours of New England-based artists by one nonprofit based inside the artist's home state and one other nonprofit based in a different New England state. So sort of like a mini tour with both local and another state as the 2 stops. And then finally, NEST 3, which for folks who have been around, bears a lot of resemblance to the Expeditions program. Funds tours of regional, national, and international artists presented by a minimum of 3 nonprofits and at least 2 different New England states. So as it says, you can have artists from anywhere in the world coming to 3 or more nonprofit arts presenters in New England. I think I'm good for the next slide. Awesome. So to speak a little bit about who is eligible to apply and receive a NEST grant, you may have heard this a little bit from me already, but applicant organizations, also known as arts presenters, you'll hear us use the terms interchangeably. Eligible applicant organizations offer performing arts programming and represent a wide range of different types of organizations. The one big piece here is that applicants do need to be a 501c3 nonprofit organization, a school, federally recognized tribal government, and or other government entity. We do not allow fiscal agents, as this is federal funding and that is not allowed by our funder, the NEA. You must also be based in a New England state. And as a little reminder here, those New England states are Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, or Vermont. Those are the 6 states of New England, and it does not include New York. In terms of applicants that we have seen in the past, you don't necessarily need to be an arts producing nonprofit, but as I mentioned, you do need to be an arts presenting nonprofit. Past examples of applicants include libraries, municipalities, historical societies, really any organization that has that 501c3 license and is interested in bringing a New England or national international artist with an S3 to their community can apply. However, all of these projects must include a public presentation of the artist who is named in the application. And a public presentation is defined as an event that is open to the public and advertised accordingly. As I mentioned, this is a federal part of a federal program. So the federal government requires that all NEFA organizational grant recipients supported by federal funding register for SAM.gov UEI or Unique Entity ID. My colleague Say has just dropped the website in the chat, so you can link and learn more. This is actually a requirement for all NEFA grants, so it is not a bad idea to check it out, even if you're interested in other programs. And finally, all applicants, applicant organizations who are applying to NEST must maintain an updated profile on Creative Ground Directory, which is NEFA's New England Creative Economy database. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. I'm good for the next slide. Okay, so now we're going to go into detail a little bit more. I'm personally going to go into detail a little bit more about Nest 1 and 2. Those are our two levels that are specifically for New England artists being presented by New England presenters. So as I mentioned, Nest 1 funds New England nonprofit applicants to present a New England artist from outside their state. For example, if you were a library or a town hall perhaps in New Hampshire and you wanted to bring a artist from Boston, you could apply to Nest 1 to bring that artist from Massachusetts over into New Hampshire. The deadlines for Nest 1 happen 3 times a year, and they are the first business days and most often the first day of the month of August, December, and March. A new sort of tidbit here. We do have some limits on how many Nest 1 and 2 applications folks can submit. So organizations may submit up to 2 Nest 1 and or Nest 2 applications in any combination for each deadline. So for example, our next deadline is in December. You could submit 1 Nest 1 application and 1 Nest 2 application. You could submit 2 Nest 2 applications. You could submit 2 Nest 2 applications, but you could not submit total more than 2 applications. So not 3 or more. In your Nest 1 application, you are applying for a percentage of the artist fee to present the artist to your community. So grants provide up to 60% of that artist fee and range from $500 to $5,000. Important to note, though, that applications for artist fees of under $2,000 may request the full artist fee, so that full $2,000. And both the artist, as well as we mentioned before, the presenter, must be in the Creative Ground directory, and that artist must be listed as Nest eligible in the Creative Ground directory. And that is Nest 1, from one state to another, one presenter, and that's how you remember that it's Nest 1. Okay, I think now we can do Nest 2. Fallon, thank you so much. So Nest 2 is our other regional only program. So Nest 2 funds the tours of New England-based artists presented by one nonprofit based inside of the artist's home state and another nonprofit based in a different New England state. This is sort of a little mini tour that folks can set up, and it also allows presenters to present New England artists from their state or community, and ensures that they're vouching for artists locally to travel throughout New England and present their work there as well. So similarly, the application deadlines for Nest 2 align with Nest 1 on August 1st or the first business days of August, December, and March. With Nest 2, each applicant organization must submit individual applications for that same deadline. So, for example, if you were presenting something in the spring and you wanted to apply for the next Nest deadline, you would both need to apply for December 1st. You couldn't have somebody wait until the March 1st deadline. So you both apply December 1st, and we do look for some coordination there between the two presenting organizations. So organizations, as I mentioned, can submit a maximum of 2. So again, those maximums for each deadline are inclusive of Nest 1 and 2 applications. So you can submit them in any combination, but no more than 2. Similarly to Nest One, grants provide up to 60% of the artist fee and range from $500 to $5,000. And applications with artist fees under 2,000 can apply to request the full artist fee, and the artist must be listed as Nest eligible in the Creative Ground directory. But essentially, in summary, Nest Two. 2 different presenting organizations, one from the artist's home state and one from any other state in New England. So, for example, if you are looking, if you were a Vermont-based presenter looking to present a local musician, you could do so through Nest Two, but you would need to partner with an organization in another state like Massachusetts or Rhode Island to organize a little mini tour for that Vermont musician. And both you and the out-of-state presenter would complete Nest Two applications and submit them on the same deadline to be considered. And I think I am passing it over to Fallon for Nest Three, which is slightly more complicated.
Thank you, Audrey. So as Audrey mentioned earlier, Nest 3 most closely resembles out of the 3 different versions of Nest, a previous program that we had, Expedition. Nest 3 funds tours of regional, national, and international artists presented by a minimum of 3 nonprofit organizations in at least 2 different New England states. So ways that this can look is that you have 2 presenters in Massachusetts, let's say one from Eastern Mass and one from Western Mass, and then one presenter in Vermont, and they can present an artist from anywhere in the world. It could be another New England artist from whichever state. It could be a national artist from, let's say, California, or it could be an international artist from, say, Pakistan. And 3 is the minimum number of presenters that you need, but it is not the maximum that you can have. So we have seen tours featuring like up to 7 presenters in the past, and that is totally fine. Again, as long as they are from at least 2 different New England states. So Nest 3 has 1 annual deadline, and that is on the first business day of March. Each presenting organization is responsible for negotiating the terms of the engagement with the artist and completing and submitting a Nest 3 application. So everyone submits their own application here. Organizations may submit up to 3 Nest 3 applications. And we have those limits for Nest 1 and 2, where you can submit up to 2 applications per deadline, and that sort of stacks with the Nest 3 application. So if you wanted to come in for the March deadline and submit 3 Nest 3 applications, you can also, in addition to that, submit up to 2 Nest 1 and or Nest 2 applications. Grants for Nest 3 provide up to 60% of the artist fee, but our maximum grant size for Nest 3 is $10,000. And like Nest 1 and Nest 2, applications with artist fees under $2,000 may request the full artist fee. If you are presenting a New England artist through Nest 3, then that artist must be listed as Nest eligible on Creative Ground. And for any artists that are from outside of New England, one of the presenting partners, please, just one, must submit a work sample for the artist. And any projects funded through Nest 3 must occur between June 1st, 2025 and August 31st, 2026. And of course, that is just for this this upcoming deadline here. But in general, it's always between June 1st of the year that you apply and August 31st of the following year. And I will pass it back over to Audrey.
So I am going to spend a minute here talking about things that all three levels of NEST, 1, 2, and 3, do not fund. NEST does not fund private events, defined as those that are not open to the public and not advertised accordingly. We also do not fund events taking place outside of the New England geography. We do not fund fundraisers, though, of course, we do encourage ticket sales at these events for a wide variety of reasons. You can make money on these events, but we will not be funding a performance at a gala or similar fundraising event. We do not fund activities and programs which take place exclusively in schools during class time or performances in which the majority of performers are students. We do not fund self-produced presentations by artists or ensembles, and we do not fund artists who are visiting in a guest artist capacity to a performing producing organization such as a conductor or soloist. If they are performing with the organization themselves, for example, an orchestra, someone's coming to sing with them, but it's mostly the orchestra, you could not apply to fund that guest artist. And finally, we do not fund presentations of artistic work that have funding available through our national programs, the National Dance Project and the National Theater Project. These are two other NEFA grant programs that offer support to New England organizations, and we also offer funds for those projects. There's opportunities for New England presenters to bring those projects through those programs. So for organizations who present dance and theater, it's always worth checking out what projects are available through the National Dance Project and the National Theater Project. And we encourage you to apply for touring funds for those projects through their programs respectively. But we do not fund those projects while they are being funded by another NEFA program. And I'm gonna, I think, hand it to Adrian for the next bit. Thanks.
Great. So I'm going to talk about the funding criteria. And this gets into the big question we always get, which is how do you determine who gets funded and who doesn't? And it really comes down to the funding criteria. So there are 4 criteria that we look at when assessing a grant application. And each application is reviewed individually based on this criteria. And for NEST 3, we also look at the collective strength of the overall tour as well. So first and foremost is that we are looking for a clear rationale for how the project aligns with the organization's arts programming, goals, and its significance for the community. So this is the place to talk about the artist. Name the artist. This is why we want to hear why you are presenting this artist right now for your community. The next question or the next criteria, which is that we are looking for collaborative planning among tour partners and artists, and the featured artist should be included in project planning. This criteria is only relevant for NEST 2 and 3, where partners are required. And this is where we're looking to find out more information about how you've worked with the tour partners as well as with the artist. Some examples of this might be, have you all been on conference calls together? Are you sharing resources like marketing materials or study guides? Has some, or maybe one presenter has developed a set of resources that can be shared with other presenters? Are you talking to each other? Are you learning from each other? Are you building those relationships? So that is what we're looking for with that criteria. And then we are also looking for additional activities beyond the performance, which provide opportunities for the artist in this specific engagement to meaningfully connect with various sectors of the community. Cross-sector exchange and collaboration are strongly encouraged. And by cross-sector, we mean arts organizations partnering with non-arts organizations. So partnering with a healthcare organization or a climate change organization or a social justice organization. But is there an opportunity to make the project cross-sector? And additional activities, these are the things going back to the program goals that reflect that off stage, beyond the stage. So additional activities could include panel discussions, they could include workshops, they can be informal events like dinners or other meals. But what are the opportunities for your community to connect with this artist beyond just the performance? And then finally, we are looking for projects that expand access to the arts for all New England communities, including rural and or Black, Indigenous, and people of color, also known as BIPOC communities. NEFA acknowledges structural inequities that have excluded individuals and communities from opportunity based on race, gender, disability, sexual orientation, class, age, language, culture, and geography. And we strive to counter those inequities in our work. And I recommend looking at NEFA's value statement regarding equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. Organizations that are serving rural communities and or deeply engaging BIPOC communities are highly encouraged to apply to the NEST program. So the applications which best address these funding criteria are the most likely to receive funding. The funding amount also is based on how well the criteria is met. So the stronger the application in meeting these criteria, the higher the likelihood of the grant and the higher the grant amount. NEFA staff is available to advise you throughout the process. So if you have questions, you're welcome to reach out to us. The full application for NEST 1 and 2, the next deadline's December, so that deadline, the applications are usually posted about 6 to 8 weeks in advance. So it's not available just yet. And similarly, NEST 3 will be available in early 2025. So while you can't look at the full application at the moment, because we don't have one open, you can preview the narrative questions on our website. You will see a link. Thank you, Say, for dropping that in the chat. And if you look at those narrative questions, you'll see a direct correlation between the questions and these funding criteria. My sort of pro tip for everyone is if your answer to one of the narrative questions is no or not applicable, then this grant program might not be the right fit for you. We are looking for an answer to those questions. So for instance, if we ask how you've collaborated with partners, we want to hear how you've collaborated with partners. And if you haven't, then you are going to have a hard time meeting the second funding criterion. My other piece of advice in terms of answering narrative questions is specificity. The most common piece of feedback we hear from panelists is that they want more details. So, we've tried to provide you with enough space to give that information. There is a 2,000 character limit per question, but I encourage you to take up that entire space because we do want to hear about your project. We want to hear about your partners. We want to hear about your community. The other piece is, you should never assume panelists or NEFA will know anything about what you're talking about. Write it as if you are writing for someone who has no idea what you do or who's in your community, who you serve, anything like that. One side note to also mention, Audrey kind of mentioned it earlier, which is that we do encourage charging admission for projects. We are not necessarily looking for projects that are free. There are certainly events where that makes more sense for certain either practical or reasons related to the goals of the event. But in general, we are looking for projects that charge admission because admission can help provide that revenue that is so important to all of us these days. They also remind the audience that the artists doing this work, that their work has value and should be compensated. And then on a practical level, paid admission can also help with attendance at events, as well as helping to collect data about patrons that might be helpful in marketing and fundraising. So that's the funding criteria. And if you really want kind of the inside view, or you're really wondering how NEST works or how you get a NEST grant, this funding criteria is the key to that. So I encourage you to spend some time looking at that and considering how you would address the questions. So we can go to the next slide. So just a little bit about the review and the award process. So NEST 1 and 2 applications are reviewed by NEST advisors. These advisors are representatives from each of the New England State Arts agencies, and applicants are encouraged to contact the NEST advisor from their state while they're applying. We do have that information on our website. Because these are the folks looking at your grant, so it can be a good idea to just give them a heads up or check in with them or ask them a question. For NEST 1 and 2, applicants are generally notified about 6 to 8 weeks after the deadline. For NEST 3, applications are reviewed by panelists from the presenting and touring field, so it is a peer panel review process. These panelists might include presenters, artists, agents, managers, or others who are just familiar with the presenting and touring field. They may be from New England, but more likely they may not be, as we are a small region. And so it can be hard to find folks who don't have a conflict of interest. And so this means that NEST 3 panelists might be familiar with your organization, they might be familiar with your community, but don't assume that. You want to be sure to explain what you do and who the community is that you serve. I would not assume they have knowledge about that. And just to be clear, that NEFA staff, while we facilitate the process, we do not actually weigh in about the decisions. That is really up to the panel, and the final decisions are made by the panel. And with NEST 3, applicants are notified about 8 to 10 weeks after the deadline. With all NEFA grant programs, we offer panel feedback once the process has concluded. And we even recommend, even if you received funding, you still might want to reach out for feedback. We find that people are often surprised to learn why something was funded, in addition to sometimes learning why it wasn't funded. And both things can really help with future applications. So you're more than welcome to reach out to us once the process has concluded. Should you receive a NEST grant, a final report will be required. And NEST grants are generally paid as a reimbursement after that final report is submitted. Partial grant payments can be made before the project is completed. If there has already been a partial payment to the artist, then we can reimburse. But it's good to know from the beginning that NEST grants are generally reimbursement grants. And we do recommend, say, just dropped another link in there, reviewing the final report requirements before applying to just make sure that you feel like you have the capacity to meet those requirements, as that's an important part of receiving a grant as well. And I will pass it back to Fallon.
Thank you, Adrian. So we've mentioned deadlines are the first business days of August, December, and March. And so here are exactly when those days fall within this current grant cycle. So we have a deadline pass on August 1st. The next upcoming grant deadline will be on December 2nd. And then the final deadline for the cycle will be on March 3rd. As a reminder, the August 1st deadline was just for NEST 1 and 2 grants. The December 2nd deadline will also be just for NEST 1 and 2 grants, but the March 3rd deadline will be for NEST 1, 2, and 3 grants. And all applications to all NEFA grant programs are submitted through our online grants portal. And please note that we do not accept late applications. So if your grant has not been submitted by 11:59 p.m. on whichever day that the deadline falls on, it will not be accepted. Please make sure you hit submit. When you have completed your application, we have seen a few people stumble there. But yes, no late submissions are accepted for the NEST grant program. And I will pass things back to Adrian.
So we want to touch on a few resources that are complementary to the grant programs that we offer. First, I think, can we go back a slide? Thank you. So first is the Creative Ground website. So creativeground.org is New England's community generated free, let me say it again, free arts and culture directory that provides visibility, connection, and information to support a region-wide creative network. So this is an opportunity for artists and arts organizations to promote their work, to find collaborators, and connect with Creative New England. It is an excellent tool. It is a very, very robust directory. I think there's about 30,000 profiles on there at the moment. All cultural nonprofits are represented on there, as well as a lot of the artists and creative businesses who are based in the region. You can search it a variety of ways, including by organization type, by discipline, by geography. So you can, that's a great tool if you're looking to find partners like outside of your state. You can narrow it down to a particular state or even a particular town. You can also use Creative Ground to find NEST eligible artists. So with NEST 1 and 2, all artists need to be what we call NEST eligible on Creative Ground. And this essentially means that they have filled out certain fields within their Creative Ground profile. Those are things artists would want to fill out anyway. So it's like things like having a description, having a photo, having a link to a video, talking about past engagements, things like that. There is more information on the website about those specific NEST artist requirements, but any artist who wants to be considered for a NEST 1 or 2 grant must complete the NEST eligibility on Creative Ground. I will say any artist can also become NEST eligible at any time. So it's just a rolling process that everyone can do at their own time. It is reviewed by human beings, so it's also not automated, and just want to note that. So if you do it and you don't get approved within 90 seconds, it's because a human being is going to look at it and may email you if there are any questions. And organizations who apply to NEST, to all 3 versions of NEST, are also encouraged to have a Creative Ground profile. It's a resource that we share with panelists, so they may be using Creative Ground to learn more about you or your organization or your community. And again, it's a great way to promote your work. So NEST 3 does require those partners throughout New England. Creative Ground is a great resource for that, but we also want to talk about another event that we do that helps to foster those partnerships. So this fall, we are hosting our annual Idea Swap event. This is an annual gathering of New England-based arts presenters, cultural organizations, and artists. And they come together to share networking and project ideas specifically for the NEST 3 program. This year's event is being held November 12th in Worcester, Mass. It's a one-day event, and it's a great opportunity if you are interested in NEST 3 and you have a project you're interested in touring, or you just want to hear what other people are talking about. It's a really good opportunity to network and gather with peers from around the region. It's generally about 150 to 175 people for one very packed day of information. But it's a nice chance to also connect with people in person and use that time to start building some relationships. So I think we're moving into the final parts of this presentation. And as we're doing that, I encourage you to also drop any questions you have in the chat, and we will do our best to answer them. And I'll pass it back to Fallon.
Thank you, Adrian. So just shout out to our funders that we mentioned earlier, the National Endowment for the Arts and the 6 New England State Arts Agencies. They enable us to do what we do. So thank you to them. And lastly, we will be moving into the questions part of this webinar now. And so we encourage you to drop questions in the chat, but also if there is a question that we're not able to answer in the time we have allotted, or you think of something later, you can reach us. We have our contact info just shared right here on this slide. And we very, very strongly encourage you to reach out to us if you are new to the NEST grant program and thinking of submitting an application. It's always good just to check in and make sure you are understanding program guidelines correctly. And if you have any questions at all, we are here to help and to answer. With all that being said, in addition to dropping questions in the chat, you can also feel free to use the raise hand function in Zoom and then speak your question as well. Again, just please note that this is recorded and will be going up on our website. So if you do not want your likeness posted on our website, then we advise that you use the chat instead.
I see a question in the chat that said, would you please review the project timeline for the different application deadlines? I saw one for NEST 3, but could use a refresher for NEST 1. Yes. Fallon, do you want to go back to the deadline slide, which might be helpful? Thank you. So for NEST 1 and 2, so the August deadline that we just had is for projects that start after November 1st. The December deadline is for projects after March 1st, and the March deadline is for projects after June 1st. So they are all approximately 3 months in advance of when projects need to start. And then projects should generally take place within about a year of that time, that start of that timeline. And then NEST 3, as Fallon had noted, is about a year and a half, a little less. It's basically 2 summers. So it always starts June 1 and runs through the following August. So for folks who exclusively do summer programming, there's an opportunity to apply for both the upcoming summer as well as the following summer. Yes, and as noted, this is all on our website as well. All of the information we've shared today is on the website, so I hope no one was trying to take frantic notes. It is all there, but we are happy to answer questions. We know it's sometimes a little easier to hear it kind of said verbally. Right. If there aren't other questions, we'll just go back to one question that was posted in the chat about whether there's a limit on the number of applications that an artist can be listed in. And the answer to that is that there currently are no limits in terms of the artists. The only limits are on the number of applications that a presenter can submit. All right, well, if there are no further questions, we want to thank everyone for joining us today. Again, we are available and here to answer questions at any time. Feel free to call or email us. And we appreciate you joining us, and this recording will be posted on NEFA's website within a few weeks. So also, if you really want to watch it again, you are welcome to come back and do that. But thank you for joining us, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.